What's up, everybody? Welcome to You Rankin with me. Today we're talking Scream. As you can see with my shirt, and a lot of people are wearing Ghostface shirts. It's okay if you're not, though.
I'm not.
We have a really great
Me neither.
panel here. It's usually me and my good buddy James Tancock. I'm your host, Chad Webb, and James Tancock is the co-host. How's it going, James?
I'm doing just fine, man. Doing pretty good.
Great, great. Normally, we also have Kerri Webb, my wife, on the panel as well. So, as always, Kerri's here. But we have some new faces on the show. We have Charles Mullen, and we have Hunter Chambliss. Welcome, guys. How's it going?
Charles, you can start.
Yeah, no, it's going great. Excited to be here. I won't have as many hot takes for this one as I will for the Star Wars one, but I'll do my best.
Yeah,
My bad.
excited about the future Star Wars one that we're gonna do. I need to rewatch some of those before we do that. But yeah, how's it going, Hunter?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm super ready to talk about Scream. I've been on a Halloween kick the past week or two, so it's time to get back to Scream. Let's do it.
Yeah, us too. Like ever since September started, we've basically just been watching horror movies all the time. Even saw Scream 2 in the theater recently, and that was pretty great.
Ooh, that
So
sounds
yeah,
fun.
James was there. That was pretty fun. So yeah, let's go around a little bit and just kind of say what your relationship is to Scream. We can start with Charles.
Sure. Scream is probably the first scary movie I ever watched. That like actually terrified me, and not like a movie that was supposed to be scary and I wasn't scared of. I was terrified of Scream the first time I saw it. But then what made me love it the second time through and after rewatches was just all the deconstruction of the horror genre, the great character moments, the great humor, the whodunit clues sprinkled throughout, and just the really thoughtful kills. And Scream now to me is by far, I think, the best horror series of all time. And it has a really interesting relationship and growth over the last 15, 20 years. So excited to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely one of the most like consistent franchises. There's some people might say a bad one. I wouldn't say that there's a bad one. I think they're all good in their own way. Some of them great, some of them good. James, what is your relationship to Scream?
So I started watching these. I mean, long after or most of these were out in the theaters or on DVD or something like that. So when I started watching more horror movies, it was more of like the classics. I keep on bringing these up, but like The Exorcist, The Ring, The Grudge, things like that. So when I started first watching the Scream movies, like I didn't really think they were that scary. Like I think based on like what I'd seen before with like the other horror movies I watched, these weren't really that scary. So I don't think I really took that away from these movies, but it kind of allowed me to watch them like Charles said, for like the whodunit moments and all like the things you can pick out of like the conversations and the scenes. So I was a little more interested in them for that reason than how like scared they were. I personally don't think they're that scary, but that's just my experience with the movies. So
Absolutely, yeah. Horror is definitely subjective. Different things scare different people. Hunter, what is your? We know Hunter's a big Scream fan. Hunter, what's your relationship
Yes.
to Scream, man?
So, kind of like with Charles, Scream the original was the first movie to get me into horror. It gave me that love for horror, but funny enough, I couldn't watch it when I first tried to watch it because the opening scene scared me too much as a kid. So I had to wait like 1 or 2 more years, and then I was like, okay, now I see why this movie is so good. And it's a movie that is constantly on my Halloween rewatch list every year. Like the whole series is really. There isn't a bad Scream movie. There is one I like least in the series, which we'll get to. But yeah, I love this franchise.
Perfect. Kerri, what is your relationship to Scream?
Well, you'll take your. I like this series because it got Chad into horror
Yes.
movies. And I've been a big horror fan since I was a kid. But we actually watched these for the first time together with Charles
Charles,
as well.
yeah.
And a lot of our college friends. And I don't know, this series is just such a great time. And I think, like everyone has said, there's not, with so many horror franchises, like the first one will be great and the rest will be like really crappy
Mhm.
or very campy and like, fun to watch because they're so bad. with Scream, I think genuinely there's not a bad movie. And this is, yeah, we watch this series I think at least once a year.
Agree. Yeah. That was the story I was going to kind of tell. I'm glad Kerri touched on it because I used to go to her college all the time, and I wasn't into horror. She was, and she was like, my friend Charles, they're gonna put on, Scream on in like one of the classrooms, and we're gonna broadcast it. We're gonna have fun, and I was like, I don't know. Like I had always been interested in horror movies because of like the concepts, like Freddy Krueger with Nightmare on Elm Street. We'll probably get to that ranking at some point. Was
Yes.
really an interesting concept that I wanted to get into, but I was afraid of like jump scares and I was afraid of just like things coming at me and stuff like that. I finally decided to go see Scream and I've never turned back. I've just been into horror ever since because I was like, oh, this is what this is? Like, it's not like I'm gonna have nightmares and, shit myself and all this stuff all the time. And,
Shit
just
yourself.
one,
I would watch that, dude.
one other thing is like we were gonna go see The Conjuring in the theater, and we did, and I was like dreading it because I was like, all right, this isn't like Scream. This is like legit. Like they're actually like it's not like fun. They're like actually trying to like scare you to death. And I remember one part there was one like jump scare. And it got Kerri. It didn't get me, and I was like sitting there laughing, like that wasn't scary. And then Kerri was like, "I don't think you're scared of horror movies, Chad." So I was like, "Maybe not. I don't know." But anyways, we'll get into it. It's a franchise we all love. That's why I wanted to take a little bit of time to kind of say how we feel about it because it is my favorite horror franchise and I adore it dearly. So let's get into ranking it. Like some of them said, they're all at least good movies, some of them great, and so let's see how we all feel about them. So we're going to get into it. We're going to go through our rankings. We've all done personal rankings, so we're going to start with our number 5 and go to our number 1 because there's only 5 films in this franchise. So I think we'll probably start with Kerri on this one. She'll give us her 5, and then we'll go around. Everyone else will give us their 5. Since there's only 5 films in this, we're not going to do any wait for it or hold off on that one because there's not that many in this franchise. So, Kerri, without further ado, what is your number 5 for the series?
My number 5 is Scream 2022.
All right. And then I'm going to say mine. Mine is also Scream 2022. Charles, what is your number 5?
I'm already so fascinated. My last place is got to be Scream 4.
Okay. James, what is your... That's not a hot take for some people. James, what is your number 5?
Mine is also Scream 4.
Interesting. Okay.
Wow.
And I think I might know what Hunter's is.
Yeah.
Hunter, what is your number 5?
Mine is Scream 3.
Okay, yours is Scream 3.
No,
I
poor
feel
Scream
like
3,
that's the common take is Scream 3 is the worst. So Hunter is kind of on the money with I think a majority of people around the town. So now since majority didn't say anything, but should we talk about Scream 20? No. 2 people chose Scream 2022.
2 people said
Scream 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Scream 2022 first.
Sure.
And then we'll go on to Scream 4, and then we'll go with our 4s. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's go with it. Kerri, you said Scream 2022 first.
Yeah.
Why don't you start?
Okay, so like I said, there's not a bad movie in this bunch, and I think partially why this came in last for me over my number 4 is just because I don't have as much nostalgia for it, and I don't love some of the decisions that were made for the plot of this movie, and I guess I'll say specifically what those are.
We can get into spoilers.
I think the
Yeah.
whole thing,
Click away if you don't want to
Yeah.
know.
okay, I'll say specifically the 2 things I don't like. Otherwise, everything else I love about this movie. I think it's a fantastic movie. The only 2 things I don't like are, oh my God, what's her name? Sam.
hmm Sam Carpenter.
I understand why they did both of these things, but I just dislike them, I guess. Sam's, obviously the daughter of Billy Loomis, which to me kind of conflicts a little bit with his character in the first movie, because in the first movie, one of his whole reasons for trying to kill Sydney is she won't have sex with him. That's not the whole reason, obviously, but I'm like, if you're getting it somewhere else, are you really trying to like kill her over it? The other thing is, I think the whole thing where Sam sees Billy all the time, that was just a blatant excuse to get Scoot Ulrich in the movie. I dislike it a lot. It's like, honestly, I know, you should go into these movies like with the suspension of disbelief,
But it takes you out of the movie.
It takes me out of the movie, I guess. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, this is just blatantly like, Scoot Ulrich love. Everything else I absolutely adore about this movie. I love the new characters. I think they're fantastic. I think the actors and actresses they chose for these characters are fantastic. I love that we still get our legacy characters. I hate that Dewey dies, but I also don't think it was a bad choice.
Yeah, he went out with he went out kind of making a dumb mistake, which he makes dumb mistakes all the time. But he also went out heroically and nobly, and it tied back in with Kale. It was a good one.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Kerri. Even though I placed Scream 2022 way higher than you did, this movie this makes two like really bad decisions, just objectively. Sam is a bad main character. Sam is someone that doesn't really like face that much adversity with the killer it's themselves until like possibly like the midway point of the movie, which is just it's awkward to watch a Scream movie around a protagonist that doesn't have their first encounter with Scream until much later. And then it's also a bad decision because you cast Jenna Ortega in the movie, who basically we now know Jenna Ortega is one of the best like up and coming Scream queens that we have right now. And like she in multiple moments in that movie stole the movie. And so it's just one of those things where normally Scream, they get it right. They make a really intelligent, like creative decision, and they just did not make the right decision there. It should have been Jenna Ortega as the main character, and Sam maybe as the opening kill, because just Sam just doesn't bring a lot. And I also agree about the ghost thing, but I think the only reason I didn't ding it as much is because unfortunately this is not unique to Scream. Scream has like these random ghost moments, supernatural moments that make no sense and are never explained ever, and then they just go away. So because I have this fondness for Scream 3, even though the ridiculousness with the ghost plot, I didn't ding it as much.
I agree with both of you guys. It's weird because right after watching this film, I was like on a high. I was like, "Scream's back! This is great!" I put it at like number 3 at some point, but like after rewatching it, like I think 2 more times, for me, it's not as fun as it was the first watch for me. And it's a lot of the stuff that you guys said, the Billy stuff, the kind of some of the like that seems like kind of like plot holes, like why would this person be here at this time? And I normally don't really like look into it like that, but I don't know. It just thinking about like this movie, it doesn't have the same kind of excitement that the others do, and I think it's probably like Kerri said because of my nostalgia, because of my attachment to some of the characters, and I'm I'm not even saying that they shouldn't have done what they did, because I think moving it on to a new generation is kind of like the next logical move for them to do. And I'm really interested to see what they do with the 6th installment. It being set in New York sounds really interesting. Um, and there's some behind the scenes, like Hunter and I have had conversations about this all the time.
We have.
The Neve Campbell controversy and stuff behind the scenes. It shouldn't affect the movie itself and my enjoyment of it, but it kind of does in a way, because it's like it feels like the franchise is going in a way not where it's like respecting the artists and saying you guys get to have some sort of like control over like how this goes. Like even they were even like asking Donald Pleasance all the time, like how to move on with certain characters and stuff like that. And it feels like because of money, they're forcing out like an actress that could have had like an executive producer role or something like that. Maybe not been in the movie as much because we now have new characters to move on with. And I think a lot of them are very exciting. I liked the killers in this one, even though they're done with. I thought they were really interesting and exciting. I loved the whole toxic fandom plot. I thought that was really interesting. So this movie had a lot going for it, and it was fun initially, but for me, just upon rewatch, just hasn't held up as much. And I think it's a lot of the Billy stuff, um, and just I don't know. This might just be one that's not exactly for me as much as it is for other people who might have it a lot higher, which I think is great. But for me, that's why I put it as my last. But like I've said, none of these are bad in my opinion. I enjoy them all to differing extents. So without further ado, let's move on to James. James, what do you think about this one?
Are we still talking about Scream
Scream
5?
2022, yes.
2022 one? Okay, so this one was a little bit higher up on my list. These, I kind of ranked them off of, I guess, like the whole payout of like what the plot leads up to, like how it ends pretty much. Because, like, I think they all have similar, I mean, obviously it's all similar, themes, characters, and things like that. So you can kind of, I felt I could take away like at the very end what the payout kind of was. So this one was a little higher up because they teamed up with each other to try and do new killings to create some like requel thing or whatever they tried to call it. This one, I liked the line that Randy Quaid says when they're talking to Dewey. He's like, "Do we really have to sit here and listen to shitty Sam Elliott?" I like that line a whole lot. That's pretty funny.
That was a good
But
line.
the one, yeah, and the one thing in this one, I might do the whole logic thing here though, which kind of bothered me, was they're in this hospital and they're fighting and they're shooting, and you're telling me no one else in this hospital like notices this or like wakes up or like
It was closed, I guess.
like
Dude.
there was one guard on duty who got killed and there's nobody else in the hospital. Like that's the
hospitals
healthiest.
don't just close, right? They
That's
don't
like
just
the
have people
healthiest,
leave
like,
for the
Most
night.
horror movies have that problem, though.
Listen,
True.
Ghostface knows how capitalism works. He went in there, he met with all of the executive
He paid
staff,
everybody
paid
off.
them off. Like,
At
listen,
least,
James,
at least in
the
some of,
signs are there.
at
That's like
least
the
in some
most
of the,
healthiest town ever. The least
at least
uninjured people ever.
at least in some of the Halloween movies, you actually have like Michael Myers going around like shutting down things, like the power plant, killing off the guards. You don't really have that in this one. Interesting take, James.
But I kind of liked the ending of this one, so I put this one a little bit higher on my list than a few others. But overall, I thought this was a pretty good offering for this franchise. I like Scream 5 or Scream 2022. I like that.
Perfect. I know Hunter's gonna want to love on this movie. I know he really likes this one. I do want to throw in one more point because one of my favorite characters, probably my favorite, is Dewey. And I thought, even though they did kill him off in this one, and it was brutal to watch, I did think that the send off was really cool,
Yeah.
especially because they brought back the musical cue from Scream 2 with his like little
Yeah.
score, which is amazing. And
Mhm.
Kerri can tell you in the theater when that happened, I was like, I was so
Yeah.
excited. Hunter, why do you love Scream 2022? And you don't have to reveal your placement of it, or you can if you want, but you don't have to.
I'll just say I have this like way higher up on my list, as you guys can probably suspect. I don't know. Going into the Scream 5, I was excited because it was a new Scream movie after I believe it was 10 years or 11 years at that time when it came out, and I was like, okay, without Wes Craven, how are they gonna do it? Because Wes was a big part of the Scream franchise. He helped it be what it is, and what I loved is Radio Silence took a Scream movie, made it their own, but also paid a lot of respect to Wes Craven, not only in the Easter eggs that you see in the background, which every time I rewatch this movie, I see new Easter eggs I didn't see before, but in treating the legacy characters with respect, not making them dumb, not making them do something that they wouldn't have done in the franchise before. Dewey's death, for example. What does he say? He says you have to shoot him in the head because if you don't, they come back. That's something that Dewey would know after going through all these movies, and it makes sense as to why he would go back because he's like, I belong in Woodsboro. I'm supposed to protect the people, and I know from the past 4 movies that if you don't shoot him in the head, more people are going to die, and that's going to be on my conscience. So I love the way he went out. I love the new characters. I love how they kind of have this kind of suspicion of each other all the way through, because it's like you don't know who the killer is, you don't know what's going to happen, and it's harkens back to the original Scream to me, where it's like I didn't know who the killer was, I didn't know what's going to happen, and I also love that it wasn't tied directly to the Sydney character. Like it wasn't some long lost brother, or it wasn't someone that was connected to her past. It was someone who was a fan of the series who took their love for horror movies one step too far. You know
Yeah.
that whole idea of it, and I don't know. I like how it took risk and it took great ideas, great characters, and gave us something new with it without kind of harkening on what I thought was a problem with like Scream 3 and Scream 4 was that it all tied back into one character who was, the killer was connected to Cindy in some way. This one felt like it treated the legacy characters with respect, but also wasn't afraid to focus on new characters that we're going to, fall in love with more and more and more.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what's the? I love a lot of the meta takes in this. What's the line? Welcome to Act Three.
Yeah, welcome to Act 3. Yep.
There you go. Yeah, great entry in the franchise. Let's get to our number fours. I'll go first. My number four is Scream 3. So we'll go to Charles. What's your number four, Charles?
I'm.
Oh,
I'm.
wait. I'm sorry. We didn't talk about Scream 4.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk
Oh,
about Scream 4.
Yeah, that's
sure.
right.
Then we'll get into our fours. Charles, your number five was Scream 4. You want to start?
Yeah. Scream 4. It's difficult to. Well, I guess probably the best way I can do this is talk about how I personally rank them, similar to kind of how James shared earlier. I basically like thought through all of the Scream movies, and I basically created like four key categories for why I think the movie's great. I think a good Scream movie is basically follows the template that Scream 1 has and respects the template, which is having iconic kills, having blood everywhere as much as you can, having some sprinkling of kind of intelligent and creative whodunit elements, balancing a lot of humor and scares, and then there needs to be some thoughtful deconstruction of the horror genre or movies in some way. And when I think of Scream 4, it's unfortunately a movie where a lot of those elements are missing for me. I think the stuff that it does have is blood. There's a ton of blood in this movie, and it has great kills in the movie too. I think the kill on the main character's best friend across the way. It's probably one
Olivia.
of the best. Yeah, Olivia is probably one of the best kills in the franchise, just because you're constantly, as the audience, guessing where the killer is. At first, you think the killer is outside of their house. Then you think he's in the closet. Then you think he's outside of Olivia's house. Then you think he's somewhere in Olivia's house, but no, he's in Olivia's closet. And then they're just watching helplessly. I think it's just great, and it even goes back into another Sydney chase sequence too. That whole 10 minutes is great. But where it's missing a lot of is the movie's just not funny to me. There's a lot of moments where they go for funny, and I just kind of groan. I think the biggest one is with the cops. I'm not a huge fan of the side cops characters. I know,
Oh,
Chad,
Chris
you love
Lewis.
them. They're played by really charismatic people, but they just don't really, to me, serve that much of a purpose. I think past Scream movies had more respect for some of the side characters, and in Scream 4, they just they with guns like in a police car just easily get offed by a kid with a knife that is like 10 years younger than them. A lot of it doesn't make any sense, and a lot of the kills also don't make a lot of sense. There are moments where Scream or the Ghostface exhibits like superhuman strength, and I know there's like a little bit of like meta commentary going on with that, but it's hard for me to see the killers in this movie doing a lot of the kills that they do. I think, I guess, the last point here is, and this is where I docket a lot of points. Scream 4 also doesn't make a lot of sense with like what it was supposed to do. It was meant to be the beginning of a new trilogy, bring back legacy characters, but bring in new ones and keep the thing going. But the movie kills off all of the new characters. And the one that we love the most is like, unless you're paying attention to like a little like side comment in Scream 5, she's also still dead. And so it doesn't really even make sense in that realm too. It's not restarting the trilogy. It's not introducing new characters except for the sheriff that lives and then dies in Scream 5. And the legacy characters are awkward too. They don't make a lot of sense, at least for me. Sydney still has some really good moments in the movie, but Dewey's mostly useless and not funny and just seems weak in this movie. And you also lose. Oh my gosh, I can't even. Gail, you lose Gail for like half of the movie too because she gets knocked out and not killed somehow by Go. I still don't really understand what happened there. So I'm rambling a little bit too long, but as you can tell, like I really Scream 4 is something that like I'll enjoy on a rewatch, but it's not a movie I'm smiling during.
Interesting. All right. I like that line. That sounds like a debate, like final debate line. Like not smiling during that one. James, what do you think about Scream 4?
So going on what I said before, I thought this to me was kind of like the weakest ending, like the lamest one, when it's Emma Roberts' character is just like jealous of how Sydney survived the first ones, and she like grew up with her whole family talking about Sydney this, Sydney that, just growing up in her shadow. I was like, really? That's what we
Yeah,
went with? Like,
that
come on,
motivation's
sorry
really
guys.
weak.
Sorry,
It's really
guys, but
weak.
didn't like it that much. And to watch these movies like kind of for the end of it, because we get like the similar and the same characters throughout the whole franchise. They'll try to introduce new ones too, but for them to do that and then hit us with like, oh, she was just jealous of Sydney for surviving the first one, like that one kind of lost me. So that's why I didn't like Scream 4 that much.
Nice, nice. Hunter, what do you think about Scream 4?
So
Soundtrack.
Scream 4, oh, sorry, let me,
It's fine. It's fine, man.
how's that?
That's better.
So Scream 4 to me is very interesting because it has a lot of great moments that I love. It has a lot of great characters that I love. Um,
Mm,
but there are some moments where it feels awkward, and as Charles said, it doesn't have the Scream comedy that I like. I like to have fun in these movies. And I think the boyfriend character, Trevor, I think he was just the most boring character in the Scream franchise. There was nothing to that character but just pretty much boyfriend who's gonna die at the end. But I will say I do actually love the ending, the reason for the kill or the killings. I like the idea of Emma Roberts just literally is being a clout chaser, which is what a lot of people do in social media nowadays. They go so far, like above and beyond to get fame. That like Logan Paul is an example for that. Just a few years after Scream 4 came out, he did the Japan videos just to get clout and fame. I feel like it was kind of ahead of its time, where it's like using social media to and using the extremes to get people, to get fans, to get all this notoriety, no matter where it's good or bad. People are talking about you. So I like that idea. I just feel like, as Charles said, it wasn't the most fun of the Scream films.
All right, Kerri, what do you think about Scream 4?
Yeah, I think like Hunter said, opposite of James, I actually love the ending of this movie. I think it pays off really well. And I think the reason in this one is probably, for me, it's stronger than the reason behind the killing in 5, where they're like, oh, we want to reboot the franchise. For me, the kind of like getting fame and being the final girl, for me, that's like, I don't know, just like for Jill's character, like a really cool motive. I think Emma Roberts in the third act of this movie is going batshit crazy the whole time. I
yeah.
think it is so fun. I
Swan
love
dolls.
her. I like the twist in this. I know the first time I watched it, I think the strong thing actually in this movie, except for 5, I guess one of the killers, not both of them. But I never guessed the killers, like ever, the first time I watched them. And that, for me, that's like a little unusual. I'm pretty good at guessing stuff like that. And for me, I didn't know like either of them. I mean, obviously Emma Roberts, I think, is the stronger killer in this one. Rory's just kind of like, Rory Culkin's just kind of there. I don't, but yeah, I think so. Like Charles said, the kills in this are really fantastic. I love Sydney's character in this. I think he just shows a lot of growth, like maybe more than some of the other movies. And I don't know. I think there are parts of this that are pretty funny to me, like some of the interactions between the new younger cast, and then I think actually some of Alison Brie's kill is pretty funny, or like her character.
Oh, the parking garage.
Yeah, the parking garage.
Yeah, there are some good fun moments with that.
Yeah, so this was up a little bit higher for me. It's definitely one of my favorite in the franchise.
Yeah, so Scream 4 is interesting because, like, I know me, Charles, Kerri, and Charles's wife, Hannah, would normally watch all three all the time, and we would
Mhm.
always try to get to Scream 4, and, like, we would never could, and then one time we finally did. And it's one we haven't, like, watched a lot together, so it's interesting to hear Charles's takes because you did a really great job with, like, how you spoke about why you didn't like it as
Mhm.
much as the other ones, at least. And it's making me think a lot. But I can see where you're coming from, and I kind of agree with a lot of what you said. But I also feel like we're the same way as Carrie,
Mhm.
where I think the strongest part is Emma Roberts and as Jill, and the kind of the ending and the reveal of the killers and stuff. So in Scream 2022, when you have Mikey Madison, she's kind of like that same type of character, like she was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where she's just really crazy and just over the top with it, and that's great. That's what she does really great. But it is still extremely over the top, like like what a person when they tried it, like what would a really crazy person do? Like that's what she does, and it's just so up here. Emma Roberts is like sadistic, like real life crazy to me, where and I don't know how much because I know like there's like behind the scenes like real life stuff with Emma Roberts and how she used to treat people. Maybe she's kind of similar like that in real life. I'm not sure, but
I hope not.
she really nails um, that character. I feel like because I didn't expect her until I knew it was her, and then now every single time I'm like, she's crazy. She is so crazy. This whole movie. So I think that's where I actually I give it a little bit more points. It's not like one of my all-time favorite horror movies or anything like that, but when I watch through the series, I really enjoy watching Emma Roberts. In that, I think it's the one of the stronger reveals of like a villain, and she didn't even give a fuck about her teammate partner. It's just like
Nah.
it's
Nope.
all her. That movie's hers, and yeah, I really enjoy that about it. So I rank it a little bit higher, but not too much higher. So yeah, that was Scream 4. So yeah, as I said, my number 4 is Scream 3. Charles, what is your screen? What is your number 4?
Yeah, my number 4. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I put Scream 3 as well.
All right, and James, what is your number 4?
I put Scream 2.
Interesting. Okay, Hunter, what's your number 4?
I put Scream 4 actually.
All right, okay. Oh, Kerri, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is Scream 3.
You're on the same screen as me, so sometimes I forget. I count the tiles. Yeah, so now we'll talk about Scream 3 because I feel like most of us had Scream 3 on there, or 3 of us did. No, 4 of us did, right?
Yeah, 4 of us have said Scream 3 already.
All right, so I said Scream 3 first, so
No, Hunter said Scream 3. It was his
that was your number 5, Hunter? Hunter,
Yeah,
you go
number
ahead
5 was Scream
and start
3.
with Scream 3.
Okay, so it's still a Scream movie, which I love, and I think what I love about it is the fact that it's probably the most meta of any of the Scream films because it is set on a Hollywood back lot. You have all the, the pomp and circumstance of Hollywood. The thing that I cannot, like, accept in this movie is the voice changer box. Because I still don't know how they came up with a device where it's like I can match someone's voice perfectly to the T over a phone in 2000. So I'm just like, to me, it's like it was like a plot device just to get people in certain locations. I'm like, I don't like when you have to use an object like that to get people where you want to put them. Instead, write a script around it where they would end up there anyway, and then the killer picks them off. Instead of using this voice box. And I also think there was a lot of like too much comedy in this movie. With Scream 4, they didn't have enough comedy. In Scream 3, they went over the top with too much comedy, and I feel like that's kind of not a perfect balance, because a perfect balance to me is part scares, part comedy, but comedy with the characters, not the situation around it. And to me, the comedy was situational, not great dialogue with comedy in it.
Nice, nice. I just wanted to add your voice changer problem sounds a lot like Dr. Sartain from Halloween 2018. Big plot device. For
Yes,
getting
yes,
into it.
I did not like I didn't like that
All
part
right,
in that movie either.
Kerri, what do you think about Scream 3?
Yeah, so this one is just one above Scream 2022 for me. I think partially just because I have so much nostalgia for it, and it is. I think because it's so funny, it's such a
Hmm.
fun watch. I think Parker Posey and Gail, their interactions in this movie, I think are hilarious. I really like. I do kind of like the Hollywood plot, and like I like the little video we get from Randy, like of the rules of the trilogy. This one definitely, it notoriously had Kevin Williamson of the original four. This is the one that Kevin Williamson didn't write. They had, I think, two different. Most of them actually, I think 2 and 3 had 2 different killers originally, and I think there was a script leak, and so they made it just one killer, which is Roman. I think that's the weakest part of this movie. Like
Yeah.
his whole motive is like that he's like Sydney's half brother is weird, and we never speak of it again in the other 2 movies, which I think is hilarious. And then there are definitely, if you watch it through, it really doesn't make logical sense that there is a
No.
killer. But at the same time, there are some really cool kills in this movie. And I don't know, even though it's like, I think most people, a lot of people consider this, especially among the first, maybe not, because a lot of people didn't like Scream 4 either. So I don't know though. This one, the script is weaker, but I think we do get a lot of comedy. We get a lot of cool kills, and it's just a good time to watch.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you, Kerri. It's my number 4, but I still really enjoy this one. If I had to say which is the weakest one from an actual film perspective, it might be this one. For me. It's tied between 3, 4, and 2022. I guess I just spoiled my number 3, but yeah. She talked about Randy in the video. It's because, and I'm sure Charles is going to get into this because I know he talks about this a lot. Randy dies in Scream 2, and I love
Ooh.
the meta stuff in Scream 3 when they actually make fun of people and they're like, "Yeah, people are just mad that they killed off that Randy."
Yeah.
Like, stuff like that's like really funny. It's random. You get apparently Jay and Silent Bob are in the Scream verse. Connie Chung too, I guess. And Diane Sawyer, obviously. But yeah, Scream 3 is very, very fun. You got moments like, him throwing the knife and the hilt hitting Dewey in the head and him falling down the stairs. And it's just classic stuff like that for me is just really fun. So, like, when people are like, well, Scream 4 is not that fun, I'm like, Scream 3, at least it has the fun. The things that I don't like is kind of like in the Scream 2022 with the ghost stuff. This
Oh
really
yeah, I
brings the
forgot to
ghost
mention
stuff.
that.
Um, oh,
Sydney.
and as Kerri said, the villain as well is also very weak. Actually, there's a moment at the end between Sydney and her brother where it's kind of sweet, and she's kind of like holding his hand, and like even though he is a monster, she's like, "I'm gonna, we're blood apparently, and I'm gonna like help you as you go." And then it's like, well, we need to have him come back because he's the villain. That's the Scream thing. And I'm like, I kind of wish they would have subverted that a little bit and just let him die. And instead, he's got to come out and be like the superhuman, like shoot him in the head. Just I hate that like comeback part. I think that's kind of dumb. And the ghost stuff, get rid of that. And I think it's a better movie if you get rid of some of the things like that, they could have made it a more solid film. But I do really enjoy that one. There's a lot in it that I really like. So yeah, Charles, what do you think about Scream 3?
Yeah, Scream 3. This is gonna sound really awful, but I'll get to the positives eventually. Scream Three's, I think, the most poorly made movie out of all of them. There are just some parts where you'll rewatch it and you'll just notice like some like really bad edits. You'll notice certain moments they like cut away from kills. That like also notice certain moments that people are in the wrong place. A lot of like the shots are not as interesting. The blocking is not interesting. There's just the explosions are weird. A lot of it just a lot of in the movie is just poorly made. Not a lot of thought was put into most of the kills. I think in this, and not a lot of logic or thought was given to like how the killer would be revealed. It's just honestly, it's like a rush job, and it would be a bad movie if it wasn't for like two or three things. Then I would just objectively say Scream 3 is a really bad movie. I think the first great thing that Scream should get credit for is it was way ahead of its time with how it handled Hollywood sexual assault and sexual abuse.
Yes.
It deserves credit for the story that it tried to tell. Even if it did a poorly job of telling it in parts, it deserves credit for it. The fact that they made a story basically about the Weinsteins on a movie that was being produced by the Weinsteins. That takes a
Yep.
lot of like gall and courage to do that. And it only helps on rewatches. Like it only helps that movie grow and grow. Even the moments with Princess Leia in the dungeon of that Hollywood office. That scene is one of it. Like that's honestly one of my favorite Scream scenes ever in the series, and it's just fascinating to see the meta of like someone that used to be a Hollywood starlet that was kind of chewed and spit out, kind of talking to you about other women that were chewed up and spit out. It deserves credit for that, and I think because of that, you could argue that Scream 3 is one of the most ambitious out of all of them. It also deserves credit for the story it tries to tell about Sydney and trauma. It's a really fascinating story it tries to tell about Sydney, how she navigates, how she moves on. And even though it's very cheesy, it's also heartwarming seeing her walk out with her dogs and then
Yeah.
leave that gate open at the end. And honestly, without that ending, we don't get the badass like Sydney that we get in Scream 4, and we don't get the like just confident Scream 5 Sydney without the Scream 3 growth that she goes through. Um, I think the last thing I really wanted to talk about too is, and this is like why I also think it's poorly made, but the cast. Most of the people that they cast in this movie are really great in their roles, especially like who did you say Kerri plays
Parker
Gail?
Posey.
Parker Posey is so good. Honestly, everybody's really good in this movie.
Hmm.
And honestly, like it saves the movie and it kind of carries the movie throughout that the actors are so bought in. But like I think Gail's hair really represents like how poorly made this movie was because you have Courtney Cox like really working in overdrive. You have David Arquette working really hard. You have so many people working hard on this movie to make it work, and then everybody else around them that should be doing their job is failing. So whoever, for instance, whoever's doing Courtney Cox's hair or came up with that idea, they are failing her. And they're basically putting these actors out into a movie where they're expected to fail and then they're making gold out of it. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I really feel like if we had a different cast for Scream 3, it would be one of the worst movies ever made.
And with the hair thing, it's also interesting because in Scream 2, she had pretty great hair,
Yeah.
and Dewey even compliments her
Well,
on her.
Yeah.
Yep.
Scream 2, her hair was very of its time.
Of
Yeah,
its time,
it
yeah.
doesn't age well.
I liked it.
But Scream 3 Gale, it's like what is going on here?
Great takes, Charles. James, what did you think about Scream 3?
So I think that I like the talking points Charles made on this, and I think that's kind of what took the movie away from me and kind of separated it from other films. But I have watched this only recently, so like the whole bit about like the Weinstein thing, I was like, holy shit, they let them put that in this? Like they actually let them say that? Like, oh my god! Like to me that stood out as something pretty big to me. I kind of liked. I didn't mind the whole half brother thing, but I guess compared to the other movies, I think that was something I could get behind more so than others. I know Kerri said she liked the ending for Scream 4 and I didn't, but I think I liked the ending to Scream 3 and it seems like a lot of folks here didn't. But I think a lot of those talking points Charles made too were still really, really good. I also like the actor Scott Foley. I watched him in he was really good in The Unit, and he had a small bit in House. He plays the baseball pitcher who throws his arm out in one of the I forget which episode or season.
It's also in Scrubs.
Yes.
That
yeah, he
oh,
is.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
He
And
plays
he's
one of the boyfriends, right?
Elliot's, yeah.
Isn't he
That's
always
right.
in It's
Yeah.
Always Sunny in
Dude.
Philadelphia at one point? I think he
Oh,
is.
that guy's like at both times insufferable in Scrubs, and then like
Yeah.
really good.
But I like that actor, so I thought it was
Yeah,
cool he was in
same.
this, and I think that kind of made me like that bit of the story a bit more. So I think I'm going against the grain on this one, but I like this one the most. This was my top movie. I put Scream
Woo.
3 at number
Whoa.
Woo!
Yeah,
Wow.
you got the scalding,
All
one.
right.
scalding
Maybe I
taste.
should
All
have
right, I'm
skipped one than
excited.
other folks, but I like this one. And again, I liked the whole bit of like the meta jokes about them making the movie on a Hollywood set. Like I get how people might see that as cheesy or dumb, but I thought it was kind of cool. And then I don't think I'd ever watched a trilogy where it makes fun of itself this far into it also. So you get the whole like, oh, it's the third movie. This is what's this is that happened. So like that to me was interesting. I kind of like where they went with that, but maybe those things are why this one was my top movie. But I like Scream 3 the most. I'll say it right now.
I made a joke in the chat talking about like, well, we got hot take Charlie over here with Charles, but no, James I think has the biggest hot take
Scalding.
of the night,
That is scalding.
which I love.
Respect.
I
Respect.
love respect because
We
say how
need
you
we need
feel,
more
don't be
people out.
afraid.
We need more people out there, honestly, in the streets defending Scream 3.
Yeah.
There are way too many people coming after Scream
And
3. We need more.
I will say, like as I've alluded to, the mansion part of Scream 3 is really fun. It's just really fun.
Yeah.
So all right, so we're moving on. We're going to our number threes. So let's start with Charles, I believe, number
Yep.
3.
Sure. My number 3, I'm putting Scream 2022.
All
Yeah.
right.
I guess I'll save discussion for later on that.
James, what's your number 3?
Number 3 was Scream 2022.
Okay, Hunter, what is your number 3?
I don't think.
Hot take. Scream 2.
All right, Kerri, what is your
Interesting,
number 3?
okay.
My number 3 is Scream 4.
My number 3 is also Scream 4. So we've already discussed Scream 2022, and we've discussed Scream 4, and we've discussed Scream 3.
Although I wanted to say, if anyone I know Charles, you maybe wanted to talk about your placement, or if anyone,
Yeah,
else wanted
if you
to
want
talk
to,
about
yeah,
their placement of those.
absolutely.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Scream 2022. I have that at 3 for a few reasons. I think this shares similar things with Scream 4. They're very similar movies in some ways. In terms of like just like bringing in a new cast, having some kind of meta about like how media interacts with horror in that genre, and going back home. It has similar themes, but if I really had to think about it, Scream 5 does what Scream 4 was supposed to do better. And I guess here's kind of my reasoning for it. I think first off, it has a lot more iconic kill sequences in Scream 5. I think the opening is really interesting. Seeing the opening kill survive, I think, is really fascinating. It's a change that also will keep audiences in the future guessing. Maybe in the future that won't be
That's a
the
good
only
point.
one. I think the kill with the mom and the dad is probably the saddest kill in like the Scream franchise, and that might be a really hot take considering like Dewey dies later in the movie, because that death is extremely sad. But
yeah.
there's something about like how like that scene gives a lot of heart to the characters that just was utterly lacking in Scream 4. There was not a lot of heart given to the new characters at all. They were mostly, in my opinion, just viewed as disposable and meat bags, which I felt like Scream is normally really good at, showing an ounce of care to its characters. And in Scream 2022, you like spend time even after like both of them are gonna die, like seeing him like get so excited for his mom to come home and then to cook together and then to eat dinner together, and you see him doing the prep and you see her desperately trying to save him and you see him just like without a care in the world doing like a kind of like a almost a new reinvention of the shower kill, but like not doing it. It's just there's so much like Scream 5 really feels like you could take 10 minutes out of that movie and you could just talk about so much because there's so much they try to do in that 10 minutes. I think also something that Scream 5 brings back that they were severely lacking for a long time was really interesting villains with a really interesting reveal. In Scream 2, I do love that reveal. I think it's a lot of fun, but the mom kind of comes out of nowhere and it starts a really bad trend, and I see the mom starting to kind of, oh god, this is why we have what happens at the end of Scream 3, and this is why we just get stuck on the family for so long, is because of course it's the mom in Scream 2, but in Scream 5 it found a way to kind of shock some people but also have the villains be important. Overall, the fact that you had an older guy played by the guy from The Boys, who's awesome, and I love how it starts with them killing someone at the beginning of the reveal. I think that's really interesting. And you have the actor that plays Amber. She is trying to be the next Stewie, and I love that she's trying, and I desperately love the energy that they're bringing, because like this is more of what we need to have from Scream villains. We need to have more energy. Need to have more charisma. We need to have smarter villains. And I think that's what Scream 5 gives us, and that's why I think the reveal is so much fun for me to rewatch. Um, but I think the reason why I have it at 3 instead of higher is because, like I said earlier, this movie makes some really bad decisions. And not having Jen Ortega, your main character, is a really, really bad decision that this movie makes. And it cripples it because you lose most of the emotional heart and you have to depend on doing the legacy characters, but they can only get you so far if you're trying to start a new trilogy. So I guess with that said, Scream 5 has a lot of elements that make it a great movie, but it's just also missing a little bit and makes some pretty poor decisions that hopefully they'll fix moving forward.
Very, very good takes there, Charles. I will just disagree with you on one front, where I think Scream 4 does have some heart with Kirby's character. I know Hunter really
Oh,
loves Kirby, and
Yes, I
we do
do.
as well. I think she has a lot, even though
you're right.
the person that she's trying to have a connection with is a fucking crazy asshole. But it is what it
Yeah,
is.
but even with that, they don't have the gall to like show her survive. They throw in an Easter egg in Scream 5. So the one character with the most heart that could be the next, they just they don't even how does she
Good point.
survive? Like why are we asking these questions about someone that is one of the best new characters in Scream
Yeah.
4?
Maybe that's like just the biggest problem. Like the MCU has a villain problem, Scream has a new character problem.
I guess.
All right, so let's get on to our. We can go to our number twos because what?
I guess two people had said Scream 2, so we could either talk about that or do our number.
Oh yeah,
Let's
good
get our
point.
number twos out of the way because I feel that we're getting down. We only got two movies left to
Okay.
discuss. So James, what is your number two?
I put Scream, the first one.
All right, Hunter, what is your number two?
I put Scream 2022 as my number
Kerri,
2.
what is your
Oh.
number two?
My number 2 is Scream 2.
My number two is also Scream 2. Charles, what is your number two?
My number 2 is Scream 2.
All right, so now we can discuss Scream 2 because I feel like most people had this there. Yeah, three people had it at number two. We can. Who we start with?
Do we start with whoever said it lowest?
That would be James, I think, right?
James, you said it was number 4.
Yeah.
James, do you want to start with Scream 2?
Yeah, sure. Again, mostly for the ending. Like, I guess I didn't really vibe with the whole like. I mean, I love Timothy Olyphant, like he's an awesome actor, but I guess the whole like he turns out to be some psychopath who wants to team up with Mrs. Loomis. Like, I guess to me that didn't just kind of connect that well.
Mhm.
it was maybe a step above the whole Emma Roberts was jealous of Sydney for surviving. Like, I'm jealous. I'm going to start killing people too. Like, I hate where my life is at 30. I'm going to start killing people too. Like, I'm sorry, but that to me, it just didn't connect that well. So I
James,
like,
tell us how you really feel, dude.
I mean, it was good otherwise. I liked all the other bits of it. I guess to me, it's just the ending, the whole payout just wasn't that much to me. So that's why it's a little bit lower, or it's lower on my list. Yeah.
All right, Hunter, what do you think about Scream 2?
I actually really love Scream 2. The only problem I have is that the reveal of Debbie Salt as the killer, as Mrs. Loomis, I feel like could have been done a lot better. Her as a reporter going through the college was interesting. You just don't get enough time with her to make it seem important. That when she's revealed at the end, they have to kind of explain who she is. Like Sydney's like, "Oh, you're Mrs. Loomis," and I'm like, "Oh, that's who she is. Okay, I get it now." But overall, I think Scream 2 is a really good sequel because it shows Sydney in college trying to escape all that. There are like moments in there where I'm just like, you could have done that a little bit better. Like you could have made the script tighter, and it would have been an even better sequel. But I still love Scream 2.
Kerri, how do you feel about Scream 2?
Yeah, I love this one. I think it. I don't know. I guess it would slightly below my number one, just because I do think I think this is another one where actually the original killers were, if I remember correctly, the original killers were supposed to be Derek and Sydney's roommate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Hallie. So I think you do there's so much misdirection in this movie because I think they were supposed to be the original killers. But that's really just a nitpick. I love this movie. I don't know. It's so fun. It's like just very classic Scream. I love Sarah Michelle Gellar's character in this.
Yes.
I love like Timothy Olyphant's character is so crazy. I love the reveal in this movie. Like I think the first time I watched it, up until the last second, I was like, "Oh, is Derek actually the killer?" And just denying it. And then the reveal of Mrs. Loomis, I think that is really fun. And I think Laurie Metcalf is just a gem in this.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
We get, I think, as always, just some really fantastic kills in this movie. And it is like Scream at one of its best, like balances of comedy and horror. Like the scene where Gail's like trapped in like the soundproof thing. That's like
So good.
It's just so terrifying. I think the whole ending sequence is pretty scary. Sydney like dealing with her trauma in this movie. I think it's actually maybe a little bit more well done, or the arc is completed more in Scream 3, but I think as like a starting point, this is a really great movie.
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same way Kerri does. Any negatives I have would just be nitpicks, and I can't even really think of any that she didn't bring up. And I don't feel the same way that some other people did, especially about the reveal of the killers. And I will just say, before I get into that real quick, Scream 2 sometimes is my favorite Scream. It's just the strength of that first movie is just so good that it's hard for me to say it is my favorite. But what Kerri?
I forgot one thing. I will
Go
say
ahead.
the opening kill in this, I would say it doesn't surpass Scream, the first
Yeah.
movie, but it comes it's equal or comes really close.
I actually think that this is a better kill in Scream 2, the opening scene, but it's not as iconic. And so my whole thing, I've argued this in debate before, because Jada Pinkett Smith crushes that performance. Like the way she dies, hitting that stage, and then her eyes just like blank. Oh my god! And just like the way that like, because you hear the story about the one girl getting killed in like New York, and everyone can see her getting killed, but no one does anything. That's the exact same thing that happens at this, and that is epic. But it's also scary about Casey Becker getting killed out, and she's so close to help, and you can't So they're very close, like Kerri said, and great for different reasons. But yeah, like I said, Scream 2 is sometimes my favorite. I think it's the great. I might have to think, but I think it's the greatest horror sequel ever made. It
Hmm.
just does everything so well. I didn't know the fact that Kerri said about the original plan for the killers and stuff like that. But I think what they do is still kind of brilliant because um, you see him like in the
Mickey.
Mickey. Thank you. You see Mickey the whole movie, and you're maybe like, is it Derek? Is it Mickey? I love kind of that Debbie Salt's just kind of like in there a little bit here or there. So you can go, oh, it's this guy we see all the time and this woman that randomly just keeps coming in and nowhere. And then you don't, it's, isn't it kind of brilliant that like she never crosses paths with Sydney? And then like at the end, Sydney goes, hey, Mrs. Loomis, what the hell are you doing here? And what? That's not Debbie Salt like she's been impersonating this whole time. I love a lot of the character stuff. I love everything with Randy, with Dewey and Gale. I love all the stuff with like the sequel commentary, meta commentary, where they're
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
film class talking about sequels, and Sarah Michelle Gellar's like, you have a hard on for Cameron, and
A
just
big one too.
so much of this stuff is just really great. I love the Derek singing to Sydney scene. There's
Oh,
just
I
so
hate
much
that scene.
there's just so much fun in this movie. It's just so brilliant. There's a hilarious part where someone's calling and they're trying to find the caller, and then Gail and Dewey tackle some kid. That I mean, come on. You don't get any like you don't really get better than that. It's just a perfect kind of sequel. My favorite part is the Gail Dewey stuff. Like when he's upset that she wrote some bad stuff about him in her book and is making fun of him, and then she at first like goes like, "Sorry, Dewey. What was I gonna do?" And then later she gives him an actual like heartfelt apology, and you get the most growth that you get from Gail in this movie, where she
Yeah.
actually learns to not put her career before like lives and people that she
Hmm.
actually really finds out that she cares about. So there's just I don't know, it's so much good stuff. I could sit here and talk about it all day. I don't want to though because I want other people to talk about it. But it is you can tell I really love Scream 2. I'm so glad I got to see it in the theater recently. I had a really great time. Charles, what do you think about Scream 2?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Gale and Dewey growth, because there could be an argument made to say that this is more of a Gale and Dewey movie instead of a Sydney
Hmm.
movie, because I think out of all the Screams, this is the one where Sydney has the least amount of agency, in my opinion. Like being shuttled around by boyfriends, being shuttled around by cops all the time, being shuttled around by Dewey and Gale. They were out doing like the searching and the investigating, and even in the end, Gail's really, I think, the one that does the killing shot. I could be wrong, but she either does the killing shot or she kills one of them. I think she kills the mom.
I think it's Cotton
Cotton,
kills the
yeah.
mom.
Oh,
Cotton.
Cotton kills the mom. That's
But
right.
then she and Sydney at the end, they Mickey does come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah,
And they're
and
just
they knock,
Gonna be
and then they kill.
sweet.
And so it just, if Sydney and Kerri made a good point about Sydney's like trauma
Oh.
story, but it's almost like we don't necessarily get resolution to that story until Scream 3. So it just really feels like, for me, it's a Gale and Dewey movie, which I love. I'm definitely not going to complain about that. I think without this movie, the Scream franchise fails. Because Scream is just trying to be so creative and ambitious with each movie that like it can easily lose a chunk of its audience, and it can lose the critic love, it can lose the audience love if it like messes up the sequel that it just spent so much time making fun of. And they
Mhm.
nail it. They really do. Like, they just nail it, and it's so hard to do that. I think this has the best kills. I agree on that. I think the opening theater, I am actually going to one up y'all a little bit and say it is the best opening out of all the Scream movies.
Yeah.
And I think there's
Ooh.
something really brilliant about the fact that they're watching kind of like a more poorly made version of Casey's death, and
Why
they're
do you gotta have to get naked?
I know, and they're laughing at it, and it's almost like you're getting to appreciate how brilliant that first movie's opening is by seeing someone that is worse at filmmaking do it, and you can realize that like the difference
Mhm.
between iconic and average is is sometimes so thin. You need someone like Wes, and then it makes it iconic. And so you're
Yeah.
getting to appreciate that kind of relationship, and then you're getting the whole meta aspect of like they're watching the previous Scream. They're the opening kill. They're in our opening. Do they realize they're in
Yeah.
our opening? No, they're in a movie theater as well. I am in a movie theater.
Movie theater.
Wait, they I just went to get popcorn. Wait,
Yeah.
my boyfriend just went to get popcorn too. Like there's just so much happening. It's an opening that asks so much from the audience and like doesn't like just only shows and doesn't tell. There's clues as to like, oh, it's not like him coming back even if you didn't see him die. There's really funny moments like him going into the bathroom and the Scream guys turning around and looking at him. There's a good explanation too for someone dying. It's just I legitimately wish I could have seen that in the movie theater because I could probably bet good amount of money that maybe like 30 to 40% of people in the audience during that opening kill were really creeped out and were asking themselves if someone
Yeah.
was killed right in front of me, would I notice? Would I
Right.
even pay attention?
Mhm.
There's just so much about that opening that's really brilliant. Um, and I think with everything else, like this is still a movie that has a really, really great car kill that is really interesting.
Oh my god.
And like that whole scene is great. It goes from chase to then like brute force to then like sneaking out, and the tension in that scene is huge. And then someone still dies. You have like the operatic, like weird moments with the killer. It just you add in the musical cues too. It feels like this movie is like becoming more bigger than Sydney and bigger than the town, and it nails it. I think the only thing that I take points away from is what Kerri talked about earlier. The misdirection really hurts this movie. Um, I don't. It's one of those movies. Every time I rewatch it, I just struggle to see any clues that reveal the killers. Like I still don't really understand why someone like I guess he was someone that she met on 4chan or the dark web, and then he went to college at the same college Sydney did, but like didn't do anything for the first like 2 year. It's weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Why is he doing? Is he just doing it for money? For because he likes the stab movies? All right, I guess, but we just saw the stab movies. They're not that great. Why would he be obsessed with them? It just it doesn't. I just don't. I'm not a big fan of the misdirection there, and I feel like not just because Randy dies because of the misdirection, because yeah, that's also part of it, but I just it starts a really worrisome trend that sometimes the initial idea that Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven have for an idea is a lot more brilliant than the idea that they go with. And that unfortunately is a trend that they follow with Scream 3 and then continue in Scream 4 by having a
Mhm.
really interesting original pitch and then they throw it out for something that is more traditional. And it's frustrating.
It's definitely an interesting take. I did want to add because what the thing I wanted to say kind of touches on that where I think it was Hunter who was talking about like the not understanding the Timothy Oliphant stuff or whatever that didn't really work for him. But it's like I actually kind of liked that it was Debbie Salt. She found a psychopath on like a chat room. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about like 1997 like chat forums where you're always thinking about you're probably talking to some killer psychopath in this weird
Looking
chat.
for a killer.
They were
Yeah,
using AIM, I think.
and that's how she, yeah, right, and that's how she found him. And then she like kind of put him through college or something like that.
Yeah.
Like she
Oh
paid for
yeah,
his college.
She paid for him to go to that specific college.
this is why student loans are so bad. We literally
Yeah.
have to like become a serial killer to be able to afford college.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
Scream
and then
2 is really about like student loans.
Student loan debts.
Whoa.
and then I
Yeah.
love I do love that his kind of motivation, just not just that he's a psychopath, which is the most of it, but that he just has this brilliant idea, like I'm gonna get famous and I'm gonna blame the movie.
Blame the movie.
I'm gonna be the first, and it's just kind of fun. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I do really like what Charles said about because I've been reading a lot about like the Halloween movies and all the decision making that went into making those, ranking to come soon, and the thought of what some an initial idea someone had and then the change of that and was the change good. I
Yeah.
want to see the movie that Charles and Kerri were talking about with the original idea, but
And I will say, I don't. I think at least for Scream 2, and I think maybe for 3 they just like I think they had so many versions of the script,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that might have been Steve's involvement. For 2, I think it was genuinely the script leaked, and so they had to change the killers.
They had to change it
Yeah.
up.
Especially with the Randy thing too. Like they
Yeah.
initially weren't going to do that, and they changed it and pissed a lot of people off, like Charles.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of annoyed about it, but it's fine. It's I wasn't on the ground floor of watching Scream 2, so
Yeah.
when I saw all 4 movies or whatever, Randy just died in Scream 2. So.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to say is I do think like Scream 3 tries to, with the ghost, Sydney's ghost mom stuff, tries to show her, going crazy because of that. I think this does Sydney kind of losing it a lot better because I think genuinely you watch this movie and
Yeah.
I still to this day am not sure whether when she sees the ghost face mask when she's performing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
If it's real or not.
Real or not,
Yeah.
if it's just
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
because she's so traumatized and the killer is back, or
Yeah.
one of the killers was there.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And then the fact that like later, oh, that's the other brilliant thing too that I noticed this time watching Scream 2 is that I'm like, why does this play scene happen? Like just so that she can see the ghost face, and it's like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. But it's like also because the final like showdown happens there,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
she knows everything about like the stage stuff, so she can actually
Mhm.
foil the villain that way because she knows how to lower the lights in the bags and cut the stuff and what's going to fall on who. And you can see
Yeah.
Mrs. Loomis is out of her element, and also Mrs. Loomis being maybe a call back to Mrs. Voorhees. I don't know, but
Oh, easily.
yeah. So
Yeah.
a lot of really fun stuff in Scream 2, but there's one we haven't talked about. So let's reveal our number ones.
Hey, Chad.
Hunter, what do you got to say, buddy?
Sorry, one more thing. There is a funny line in Scream 2 that I wanted to bring up. It was Gail talking about a nude leak, but it was her face on Jennifer Aniston's body.
Yeah.
That's a really funny meta
It's
comment.
so good.
Yeah. Obviously they were in Friends together, so that's why it's
Mhm.
But yeah, so let's go. Hunter, what is your number one?
It is the original 1996's Scream, my number one.
Kerri, what is your number one?
Scream 1996.
That is also my number one. It is the original Scream. Charles, what is your number one?
Scream 1996. Yep.
And James, is it Scream 1996?
No, it's not.
Oh no.
Definitely
Oh
not.
no.
Nah, bro. Nah.
What's
I
your
put that at
number
number
one?
2 though. My number 1 Scream 3, dude. Come on.
I wanted to get that.
That's awesome.
Scream. We need. Scream
I'm not judging you. It's fine. Let's talk about Scream, the original, the one that started it all. Scream is the movie that we could probably say got me into horror films. Because when we started, like I've said in the beginning, we saw this in a theater. It was really, really fun. And I was like, wait a second. This movie's actually kind of silly in some ways, but it's not like a lot of people talk about Scream, the original Scream, being a horror comedy. It's not. It's a horror movie with some comedic elements in it. Like it's silly because it's meta. It pokes fun at horror movies. It talks about the rules that like the original Halloween kind of created. It talks about those rules. It plays with those rules. It's the I'll be right back, and behind you, and just all the really fun stuff. Henry Winkler just with scissors and all the stuff with that. Wes Craven making a cameo as Freddy Krueger.
Yes.
There's just like so much fun with this movie that made me go, not all horror is I just had a bad time because I was waiting for the next jump scare to happen. This has like kind of jump scares, but they're obvious, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think this is a movie that people who love jump scares and really crazy horror can still get into because it's fun and it does have some cool kills and fun moments and really great red herrings and just like misdirects that are interesting and great characters. And the end scene with Billy and Stu is just so fun. Stu, Matthew Lillard, he's probably my second favorite character in the entire franchise because he's just so weird and fun and crazy, but in a fun way where he's just a follower of Billy, but Billy, I think, is probably the best killer that we've had in the Scream franchise. He's so sadistic. Even though it kind of seems a little obvious in the beginning, like he's the weird, like kind of, emo looking boyfriend that could actually be, that weird, crazy killer guy. But I just think the reveals are so great how they use, quotes from movies, and he'll say the quote and then say what movie it's from. And it's just like really great that way. Dewey's fantastic in this movie. Seeing the killer like run after somebody and easily just get knocked down is just really funny. And it just really helped me get into horror. I think this is a great introductory movie for people into horror as well. It was in kind of like I don't want to say dying horror genre come 1996, because there's still a lot of great movies coming up to that, but especially with like the slasher and stuff, it started to get really stale. And then Scream was like, we're going to kind of make this interesting again. We're going to poke fun at the genre. We're going to have fun with it. And I think that's exactly what they did. This is the best horror movie, I think, to throw on, have a beer with your friends, and just have fun. And, that's why I just always enjoy watching this. That's why I put it as my number one, because I just don't think there's not many movies that you can actually, have this much love for, I think, that just is so good and revolutionary. Yeah, I adore this movie. It's one of the best horror movies ever made. And there you go. Who else wants to talk about it, or do we just want to go to Charles?
Yeah,
Charles.
I think Scream is the perfect movie. There's not a flaw in it. I've seen it so many times, and it's difficult for me to point out any moment that I'm not enjoying it. It had a lot of thought put into it. It had incredibly inspired casting. The casting in that movie is perfect. Everybody like plays their role just like perfectly. I think the kills are still hold up really well. There's still a lot of disgusting kills in it, but also a lot of really funny ones. The whodunit like elements, the clues sprinkled out around are great. I think it's still like there are so many clues in that movie that you can point to, and you can just see like that pay off later. I feel like it's the one that like still like they're trying to create a Scream that's so effective at placing those little clues or mysteries scattered throughout it. They're still trying to chase that, and they're struggling to. The deconstruction of horror was like the thing that really brought it to the echelon, though. I think I can feel fairly confident saying Scream is the first of its kind. And because of Scream, we have like the majority of movies that are horror movies today that people rave about are because of Scream. Like it's usually because they're deconstructing the horror genre in some way, or subverting a trope, or they're saying something about media, or saying something about horror. A lot of those great horror movies that we give a ton of credit for today just would not be happening at all without Scream. And it's honestly kind of a miracle looking back to it, like how many things could have gone wrong. I think I was just reading an article yesterday that they were sending the dailies to the Weinsteins, and the Weinsteins were like basically telling Wes Craven that they were awful. And it was the dailies of the Drew Barrymore kill that they were looking at, and they said it was going to bomb. It was not scary at all. It was awful. It was atrocious. Everybody thought the movie was going to fail. They sent someone over to the set to babysit Wes Craven because they had such little faith in him. And then they decided, you know what? We're proud of this product. We're proud of what we're doing. They put together like an edit of that opening kill and showed it to the producers. And then the producers was like, okay, never mind. This is perfect. Keep doing it. We were wrong. And you just don't see that very often. And I'm thankful for that we got that, because this was a massive chance. And it was such a big chance that its own production company lost faith in it. So I think there's just so many great things about Scream. Every subsequent Scream movie is going to try to capture this greatness, and in some ways they do. But this is the only movie that really hits it out of the park on all categories itself. And it's something that makes me kind of hope that eventually there will be a Scream movie that will be just as good as this one.
Ooh. Just a note on the whole Weinstein thing. They're also the people that made the Halloween franchise worse and kind of ruined the Hellraiser franchise until we got this most recent one, which was pretty good.
Mhm.
James, what do you think about the original Scream?
So I definitely like this one a lot. I liked the opening kill scene. I thought that like seeing her like kind of disemboweled like that maybe set the stage for what I thought was going to be more from it. There was definitely a lot of
Mhm.
blood in this. All the repeated stabbings, the shootings in the end. Like I liked all that about it. But maybe I don't know if I watched these movies too late or if I threw myself in the deep end with horror movies. But to me, like what you said, Chad, you can just like sit back, like have a beer and kind of like enjoy them. Like I didn't really find any of the bits of these movies like really scary at all. Like I guess again, maybe I watched them too late. I just don't have that same connection that other folks do. I thought going back to Scream 3 a bit with like her mom, like I thought that was a pretty interesting scene. Like I thought maybe they were going to go try to go back to like more like straight up horror scenes. It didn't seem like a token horror scene to me. I know sometimes you watch a movie and there's like, a jump scare put in here and there just for the pure sake of there being a jump scare, not to really add that much to a movie. Like I didn't get that impression from Sydney's mom in Scream 3. So maybe that's why I kind of put that movie higher too, because I thought it was going to get back to like what my impression of horror movies are. So for Scream, that's why kind of it was number 2 for me. I think it was just maybe I just watched these movies too late. I don't know if what I'm about to say is cool or not, but it seems like they did a slasher movie version of American Pie. So that's just kind of what I got from that's kind of what I got from this franchise. I don't mean to shit on Wes Craven or nothing. I mean all respect to him, but it seemed like they
That should
took
be on the
American
back of the
Pie
movie.
and made it a slasher film. That's just like the whole like high school was the first one, then they're in college, then later in life. I just those kind of parallels to me having recently rewatched those movies. Also, it just to me maybe I just watched it the wrong time in my life, and I can't make the same connections as the other folks do. But I put Scream at number 2. I thought it was really good. I liked the payoff. I liked all the whodunit bits. I liked the blood was really good, but to me, none of these movies were really scary. So when you say like, "Oh, it's a horror film," it's a horror film. Like that's just my impression of it. Like the first one I ever watched was the Amityville Horror, and then like The Exorcist and like the Japanese original stuff like that. So maybe I just threw myself in the deep end right off the bat. I
Mhm.
waited. I was like 12 or 13 to watch them, so those were probably a bit much for being that young. But maybe I got thrown in the deep end, and these just don't seem that scary to me. So
I will
that's
never
why.
watch American Pie the same way again, James.
Yeah, I will say Scream is definitely not as scary as The Exorcist, but we still love it. All right, Hunter, what did you feel about one of your favorite movies, Scream?
Yeah, so this is probably my favorite movie of all time. Not like
Wow.
not just favorite horror movie, but favorite movies of all time. And it's because I watched it at a sweet spot. Like I was like 10 or 11, I think. So it was like perfect age of like I'm getting into horror. Scream is out. I've heard great things about it, so let's watch it. And I think what's really cool is it at that age I was like, oh, I know the main character is going to be Drew Barrymore because she's huge, and then she dies in the first 10 minutes. And I'm like, that just blew my mind because I was just like, oh, I thought major star, I thought she was going to be, the lead to the whole movie. And then that's great because it's like it subverts your expectations immediately. It's like you do not know what's going to happen in this film. So sit back and enjoy. And I think the callbacks, the kind of Easter eggs in this film, the way you can go back constantly and notice new stuff every single time is amazing. Like little minor details, like the fact that Billy probably knows a lot about horror the same way as Randy does. He just doesn't show it because it's not cool to
Mhm.
be a film geek back then. But he's coming up with all these references and like he shows that he knows his horror knowledge, but he's not showing it outwards. I think those small little details are what make this movie just fantastic.
Yeah, there's a very simple formula.
Formula.
Kerri, close it out on what you think about Scream, one of your favorite movies.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites. It's my favorite. I think, like Charles said, it is a perfect film in my eyes. I think the filmmaking that in this is amazing. I think the script is just so tight, and like just rewatching this movie is just a joy because you do see like it's almost a throwaway line in the beginning where they're sitting by the fountain. Everyone has just been interviewed about Casey and Steven's death. Like I think Tatum or Sydney goes, "Oh yeah, Stu, didn't you date Casey?" And he's like, he throws it off. He's like, just for like a second. And then at the end, you find out when they're revealed to be the killers that he killed her because she's his ex-girlfriend, and she left him for Steven. And it's just like little clues like that are just, the script makes complete sense. I think the misdirection in this movie is great because you can go back and you can see, oh, that was misdirection, but it makes sense for this character to have, like for Brandy to say the things that he's saying. It's also misdirection when you're first watching it, but on subsequent rewatches, it makes sense. I think that doesn't hold up as much in the subsequent movies. The music in this movie is amazing. Like the Chad loves to talk about this, how they have Randy watching Halloween, all of them watching Halloween in the movie, and then they get to use the freaking Halloween score as part of the,
Yeah.
it pays off so well. The ending scene is like the entire act 3 is, it's so great. It's part of it's funny, but you also don't know what's going to happen, so you're also you're anxious and you're on edge. It's tense, but there's also like Stu is fucking hilarious in that whole last scene. And the kills in this are just so, like, almost all of the kills in this are iconic, right? Like you have not only just Casey Becker, just one of the best opening scenes in a movie ever. You have the Tatum death is so iconic.
The garage door.
I would say Stu's death is really iconic with the TV. It really is just just an amazing movie.
Yeah, and Kerri hit it right on the nose. That's the one thing I was going to bring up after the fact was the Halloween score, because people should know Halloween 1978 is also one of my favorite movies, and I think this is such a worthy successor to it. And the fact that they use a lot of Halloween, not in like just a weird kind of nostalgic, hey, look at that movie but they use it in such an interesting way to use that score in their own movie, because they're like, that's probably the best horror score ever made. Let's use it in our movie. And so it's playing during the whole like final sequence, and I'm just like, this is brilliant. So. Yeah,
and just the scene where Randy's watching it and he's like screaming at Jamie Lee Curtis, "Look behind you!" And meanwhile, he's oblivious to Ghostface behind him.
And he's like, "Jamie, behind you!" And his name is Jamie. So it's brilliant in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was also wondering too, James, if we have time, Chad, if James wanted to give his pitch for why Scream 3 was his favorite, because I'm curious about that too.
Sure. Not to put you on the spot, but if you want to, James.
Well, like right now? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sure. So
you had the hot take, the scalding take of having Scream 3 as your number one. I gotta hear your thesis here.
So I think, talking about the first Scream, how it kind of makes fun of itself and takes like its own like kind of stab at the horror genre itself. Like I like that it did it so well, but I guess there's just the concept of just how it took it further in the other movies. It just, to me, seemed interesting to do that in the third one also, because I was like, all right, they did it for the first one, cool. Like it was done really well. I appreciate it for what it was. And then the second one's like, oh, it's a sequel. Like it's the same general rules. But I guess I don't know what it was about the third one for me that just intrigued me, that they kept with it. They kept doing it. I liked, again, like I said, the whole mom ghost bit kind of thing that kind of brought it back to what I think is like intended to be like for like pure horror movies again. I was 12 when I watched the first Annabelle horror, so maybe I jumped in the deep end a bit much with the movies, and these didn't really seem that scary to me, but I guess a scene put in like that made me think it was going to get back to that. And again, with the payoffs in the end, I like the whole like half brother bit. I like Scott Foley a lot. So I think there's just a lot of, let's say, outliers that all kind of combined into the same movie. And that's kind of what did it for me, really.
I think we kind of like figured James out a little bit. He loves scary, creepy, supernatural horror. He loves ghost
Yeah.
stuff.
I normally do too. That's
Me too.
yeah.
Like, check out Lake Mungo. That's one of the
Oh,
scariest
yeah.
movies I've ever seen.
right.
If you love ghost
Okay.
stuff
That
and you
scared
love
me.
crazy horror, watch it with the lights off and good luck.
All
But
right.
yeah,
I will.
no. Now we can get into our final You Ranking With Me ranking. Kerri,
Yes.
take it away.
And we have a tie. So I'm going to start with in
Oh.
fourth place is Scream 4.
Interesting.
In third place,
Okay.
tied for third place, are Scream 3 and Scream 2022. And then in second place, Scream 2. And in first place by a landslide is Scream 1996, the original.
Which makes sense. A
Interesting.
lot of these franchises, the original, like Sydney says in Scream 4, don't fuck with the original. That's true for most horror franchises. There's some, like a Nightmare on Elm Street, where some people go a different way. Scream's not going to be that one. Generally, the sequels will go everywhere, but like Halloween, generally the original is always going to stand above everything else. And that's what we did with the math here. So, yeah, this was great. Thank you, everybody who was able to make it today and talk Scream with us, because it's one of our favorite franchises. We all seem to love this franchise here. And does anybody have any last Scream thoughts? No? Okay.
No, Rich, you should edit this and put in a jump scare.
What are you talking about?
We'll see.
One of your cats can be the jump scare.
All right. So I'll say, first, I'll say, it's a Scream, baby. And then the second, are you ranking with me?
All right. Bye, everyone.